Hi, I'm Blythe, and this is the story of how my sister faked cancer just to steal the house our grandmother left me. It started with a suitcase and a smile. She said she needed a place to heal. Next thing I knew, she'd changed the locks, erased family photos, and hosted a goodbye party for a disease she never had. People brought her flowers. They called me heartless. Even my mother told me she's not strong like you, but I wasn't the one lying. The question is, how do you fight someone who turns grief into performance and convinces the whole family to clap along? They say when someone passes, a house becomes just walls and wood. But when I unlocked the door to Grandma's home that morning, it still smelled like lemon furniture polish and old lavender sachets, just like her. I thought it would bring comfort. I was wrong. The will had been read a week earlier. The air in that attorney's office had felt thicker than the Portland summer humidity. My name, just mine, was on the deed to the house. I didn't look at Vera, but I felt the way her jaw clenched from across the room. She didn't throw a tantrum. That would have been too obvious. No, she smiled, like someone who'd been told the rules of the game had changed, but still planned to win. Marcia, our mother, said nothing. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue she'd been holding since breakfast, and mumbled something about how things like this tear families apart if you let them. She meant well, I think, but like most of her well-meaning, it meant little. 2 days later, Vera posted a photo from a beach in the Maldives. Bikini-clad, drink in hand, captioned, "Healing is personal. Sometimes you have to run toward the sun." It was the day of Grandma's funeral. I didn't reply. I didn't even react. I just lit a candle beside Grandma's photo and whispered a thank you she'd never hear. 2 weeks passed. I was folding laundry when the knock came. I knew that rhythm, 3 quick taps followed by a longer pause. I opened the door and there she was, suitcase at her side, oversized sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. "I couldn't handle the grief," she said, voice soft. "I had to get away. But I'm here now, for Grandma." She handed me a bottle of Pinot Noir, like it was a peace offering. I noticed she had taken the time to curl her hair. I should have said no. Instead, I stepped aside. The first night was fine. She made herself a cocktail and talked about how Bali was overrated, how grief changed her. She complimented the house, though not without a few digs, called the living room a little too grandma chic, and asked if I planned to redecorate soon. The guest room, which she claimed used to be hers, was already filled with her fragrance by morning. Her suitcase, allegedly for a weekend, was the kind of thing you'd take on a month-long cruise. "I overpacked," she laughed. "Didn't know what I'd feel like wearing." On Tuesday, she stood in the hallway, looked around the floral wallpaper Grandma had hand-chosen, and asked, "You seriously haven't painted this yet?" I started writing things down that night. Little notes. I hadn't done that since therapy after the accident. I wrote down every comment, every change she made, because I'd seen this version of her before, and I remembered what it cost me. The next morning, Lorraine stopped by. Grandma's old neighbor. She brought blueberries in a small paper bag and wore her usual crocheted sun hat. "I saw your sister in the garden," she said, setting the bag on the counter. "Last week, real late, she didn't see me." I blinked. "Last week?" Lorraine nodded slowly, stirring her coffee. "Before the funeral even. Thought you had invited her early." I hadn't. Vera wasn't even in the country, or so she said. After Lorraine left, I stared at the bag of blueberries. It suddenly felt too quiet in the house. I walked through each room like I was seeing it for the first time, taking inventory not of furniture, but of energy. Some things were already off. I sat in the sunroom and looked around. Grandma's Afghan was gone from the chair. My camera was unplugged. A candle Vera had brought from Bali was lit in the corner. Am I being too cold? I wondered. She's my sister. Maybe I'm just on edge. But this house wasn't just a structure. It was a promise. Grandma trusted me to preserve it, not to hand it over like a rental. Grief, I thought, was supposed to pull families closer. But sometimes it's a costume, and sometimes it's a weapon. That night, as I locked the doors, I wrote one more line in my journal. I thought grief brought people together. I didn't know it could disguise a home invasion. I remember I had 3 bags in my arms that day: eggs, arugula, the good olive oil from the farmer's market. I juggled them while fishing out my keys, bracing for the click of the front door lock. But when I turned the key, nothing moved. I tried again. Still nothing. My heart didn't race. Not yet. At first, I thought maybe I grabbed the wrong key, but my hand knew the rhythm too well. This key had opened that door a dozen times since I moved in. I knocked. It took a moment. Then the door opened just wide enough to see Vera, standing there barefoot, wrapped in a robe I didn't recognize. She was holding my favorite coffee mug, the one with Grandma's handwritten note printed on the side. "You are enough, always." She looked me up and down. "Oh," she said casually, "you're back." I didn't answer her nonsense with more of it. "Why doesn't my key work?" She sipped from the mug and leaned against the frame like this was some beach house she'd been vacationing in. "I had the locks changed. You weren't here, and I was getting weird vibes. Safety first, right?" "Safety for who, Vera?" Her smile didn't flinch. "You know how the world is. Grandma wouldn't have wanted you living alone in a house with outdated locks." I stood there, groceries biting into my arms, stunned by the absurdity of her calm. "And you didn't think to mention this?" She shrugged. "You don't check your texts?" There were no texts. Once inside, the shift was immediate. The living room had been rearranged. Grandma's Afghan, the one that always lay neatly folded on the back of the couch, was gone. In its place was some synthetic throw from a big box store, pale gray and impersonal. The wall that once held photos of me and Grandma now featured an abstract painting I'd never seen. Candles with names like New Moon Energy flickered on every surface. I found my voice somewhere near the stairs. "Where's the Afghan?" She looked up from her phone. "It didn't go with the new color scheme." She said that like she'd been handed some divine authority over the space, as if Grandma's history could be redecorated out of sight. In the kitchen, her things were everywhere: almond milk, imported bone broth, jars labeled adaptogens, and a whole shelf in the fridge stacked with gluten-free meal kits. My containers had been pushed to the bottom drawer. The coffee beans I loved? Replaced with a matcha tin and a sticky note. "Caffeine triggers cortisol spikes." I tried not to let her see the disbelief on my face. "You're really settling in." "I'm just helping you evolve. You've been stuck in grief mode. This is a reset." I opened my mouth to object, but she cut in, brushing past me with a soft touch to my shoulder. "Don't worry, Bly. I've got you." The next week, things escalated. At a small dinner, Marcia insisted we host. Nothing big, just close family. Vera took center stage. She talked over me, answering questions I wasn't asked, retelling my stories with twists that made me sound unstable. "She's always had anxiety around change," Vera told my uncle. "That's why I stepped in. She needs structure. It's not about control, it's about love." Marcia, of course, nodded like it all made sense, like the rewriting of who I was in my own home was something she could swallow easier than confrontation. Later that evening, I found a thank you note on the hallway table. It wasn't for me. It was from Vera to a neighbor who'd brought flowers, thanking her for being part of this healing sanctuary. She had signed it: homeowner, healer, sister. 2 days after that, Lorraine came by again. She brought an old photo, one of me and Grandma baking pies on a summer morning. She looked at me the same way she used to look at Grandma when she didn't approve but didn't want to say it out loud. "She's been telling the mailman she owns the place," she said. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was unreal. She even asked if he knew a good contractor, said she's looking to add a meditation room. I sat on the porch step, photo in hand, trying not to let my jaw tighten too hard. Lorraine knelt beside me. "You know your grandma. She didn't raise you to be nice. She raised you to be clear. Don't let grief dull your spine." That night, I didn't journal. I bought a voice recorder. I recorded the voicemail from the lawyer confirming the title and my name. I took photos of the will, uploaded them to cloud storage, backed them up twice, and I started recording everything: tone, timing, patterns. Each word Vera said that seemed too smooth. Each story she told with just a hint too much glitter. Every time she forgot, I was in the room. People like her count on chaos, on others forgetting, on rewriting facts in whispers. But I wasn't whispering anymore. It started while I was pouring tea. Vera had just come in from the backyard, where she'd been lounging on a throw blanket, pretending the afternoon sun was her therapist. She stood at the kitchen island, twirling her hair, staring out the window like she was preparing for a scene. Then she dropped it. "I have breast cancer," she said. The words came out so softly that I wasn't even sure I'd heard them right. "Stage 2, she added, adjusting the straps of her top. "I just found out." The mug in my hand stopped midair. I looked at her, waiting for something else, an expression, a tear, a tremble. But she just stood there, arms folded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I haven't told Mom yet," she said. "Didn't want to worry her too soon. I thought maybe I could handle this on my own." I asked the only thing that made sense. "When did you get diagnosed?" "2 weeks ago," she replied, far too casually. "It explains the fatigue, and the stress, and the mood stuff you've been picking up on." I didn't say it aloud, but what I'd picked up on was mostly entitlement and perfume. She went on about a doctor I'd never heard of, a clinic that sounded suspiciously generic. No paperwork, no appointments circled on calendars, just vague references to options and second opinions. "I just need a calm place to heal," she said, her tone dropping to that victimized softness she wore like a silk scarf. "This house, it's been good for my soul." That night, I checked the medicine cabinet twice. There were essential oils, a sleep mask, and a half-used bottle of magnesium gummies. No prescriptions, no anti-nausea meds, not even a single sticky note from a pharmacist. But by morning, the campaign had begun. The email came from Trina, my old friend from the photography group. "Just saw Vera's update. Are you okay?" I scrolled up to see the forwarded email. Subject line, "To those who love me." Vera had written a letter that was part self-help sermon, part farewell letter. She thanked Marcia for her endless love, her yoga instructor for holding space, her high school friend Megan for always being the light. She thanked neighbors, a coworker she hadn't seen in 5 years, and even the barista at the local coffee shop for the way he never asked too many questions. There was no mention of me. She signed it. "Healing isn't linear, but the people who show up, that's what makes it possible. I carry you all with me." Below it was a soft-filtered photo of her lying on my grandmother's porch swing, wrapped in a shawl like some Appalachian saint. The next few days were a blur of doorbells and casseroles. People stopped by with hand-sewn blankets, mason jars of bone broth, poems scribbled on recycled paper. They all greeted Vera at the door with soft voices and teary eyes. They looked at me like I was the housekeeper. One woman, mid-50s and weepy, leaned in and whispered, "You're so lucky to be part of this journey with her." I smiled, nodded, and shut the door a little harder than necessary. Later that evening, I found a stack of fitness magazines under the couch cushions, circling headlines like "Get sculpted in 30 days" and "Boost your metabolism after 40." No medical forms, no hospital pamphlets, just more lies folded neatly. The breaking point came at dinner. Marcia had invited everyone over for what she called a circle of strength. Vera wore a silk wrap and asked to sit near the window for better air circulation. The table was filled with comfort food and too many candles. As we all gathered, she stood slowly, carefully, and raised a glass. "I know not everyone understands what it means to be in pain," she began, looking directly at me. "But the people here tonight, you're my real family." Applause. Not a slow clap, not polite. Real applause. I didn't say a word. I excused myself, went through the side door, and sat in my car until the windows fogged up. That night, I stared at the house through the windshield, feeling like a ghost in my own life. "If this is a performance," I said aloud, "then I'm pulling the curtain." I grabbed my phone and made the first call. "Hi, this is Blythe Carrington. I need to confirm a diagnosis for Avira Carrington. She said she was seen at your clinic. Can you check your records?" There was a pause. A long one. And in that silence, I felt something shift. The woman on the phone finally cleared her throat. "We don't have Avira Carrington listed as a patient here." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. That pause before her answer had already told me what I needed to know. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there in my car outside the grocery store. Engine off. Hands still on the steering wheel. My knuckles were pale, not from gripping too hard, but from the silence that followed. A silence that wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of truth no one else seemed willing to carry but me. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked smug, like it had conspired with her. I unlocked the door and walked in, bag still in the back seat. The first thing I noticed was the fireplace. Grandma's portrait was gone. There had always been something grounding about that photo. Her soft eyes, that faint smile. She looked like she was mid-sentence, about to tell you not to forget the butter in the cornbread. And now she was missing. I moved through the house slowly. Room by room, the walls told the same story. Erasure. The hallway gallery wall, once filled with family photos, me and Grandma in the garden, birthdays, Christmas mornings, was now a minimalist spread of framed quotes Vera must have printed off Pinterest. I survived what was meant to destroy me. The strong don't need to scream. I found the old pictures buried in a plastic bin in the garage, smothered in a layer of mothballs and wrapped in a trash bag. No label, no care. She hadn't just wanted space, she wanted the narrative. The house didn't just need a new look, it needed a new hero, and apparently, she'd cast herself. I stood in that garage for a long time, long enough for the laundry machine to cycle through rinse and spin, long enough for the sun to fade a bit in the sky, and I made a decision. I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't confront. I'd do what Grandma always said. You don't stop someone's lie by out-shouting them. You stop it by living the truth so clearly they choke on it. Later that night, I was halfway through a sandwich when my phone buzzed. It was a link from Trina. She didn't write anything, just the URL. I tapped it open, and there she was. Vera. A selfie, softly lit, her head wrapped in a floral scarf, holding a mug she never drank from. Captioned, "Healing is hard, especially when some people can't put aside the past to show basic compassion, but God knows. And that's enough for me." The comments flooded beneath it. "You're so strong, Vera." "Cut the toxic ones loose, even if they're family." "We see you. We love you." I didn't respond. I didn't text Trina back. I just stared at the screen until my eyes hurt. Then I took screenshots. Every post, every comment, every damn heart emoji. "Let's see how God feels," I whispered, about forged hospital records. The next day, I got a call from Marcia. I could hear dishes clinking in the background, probably washing up after another quiet dinner without me. She didn't mention the post. Of course she didn't. "Honey," she said, her voice warm, practiced. "I know things feel tense, but try to be the bigger person. She's hurting." "No, Mom," I said calmly. "She's hollowing out everything Grandma built." There was a pause. "She's still your sister." "And I'm still your daughter." She exhaled hard. "Don't escalate this. We're family. That means something. Family means not having to fight to stay visible in your own home." I hung up before she could say anything else. That evening, I took out the manila folder from the drawer in the studio. Inside was Grandma's handwritten note, the one she gave me the day we painted the porch swing together. To my Bly, the one who sat with me when no one else had time. I printed a clean copy, framed it, and walked back to the living room. I stared at the empty space above the fireplace, where Grandma used to be. Then I nailed it right there. Below it, I pinned a photo of us in the garden, our hands covered in soil, laughing. It wasn't big, wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and that was enough. I didn't need to announce anything. Sometimes you reclaim space not with noise, but with presence. 2 days later, while picking up flowers at the farmer's market, I saw Vera leaning in close to Uncle Dean. Her hand was on his arm, and her voice was soft and conspiratorial. He saw me across the stalls and turned away like I was a stranger. Uncle Dean didn't just turn away. He froze, eyes catching mine across the vendor stalls, and then made a conscious pivot, like I was someone collecting signatures for a cause he didn't want to hear about. That kind of avoidance has weight. It lands in your chest and settles there, heavy and cold. I didn't say anything. Not then. I paid for the flowers I hadn't really come for and left. On the drive home, I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. But that idea was short-lived. Later that afternoon, Trina texted me. "Hey, just checking in. Dean said you refused to help Vera with her treatment. What is going on?" I stared at the screen, not because I didn't have a response, but because there were too many. I'd never refused anything. I'd never been asked. Vera had crafted her story so carefully, so cleanly, that people believed it without a second glance. She wasn't just spinning a web, she was replacing the foundation. She wasn't just building sympathy, she was rewriting our history. That Sunday, Marcia invited us over. She called it just a casual thing, but there was tension baked into every dish. Vera showed up wrapped in a shawl, pale makeup giving her a washed-out look, like she was rehearsing for a documentary about survivors. After dinner, Marcia pulled me aside while she was drying dishes. She didn't waste time. "You know your sister's not strong like you, Bly. She's not built for hard things." I leaned against the counter. "What exactly are you saying?" Marcia gave a tired little smile, one that always came out when she didn't want to answer directly. "I'm saying, maybe she needs this more than you do. The house, the space. You've always been so independent. She's fragile." My hands stayed still, but I felt a snap inside. "Are you suggesting I give her the house?" She hesitated, wiped the same plate for a second too long. "It's just a house, Blythe. Don't let bricks ruin your bond." I nodded slowly. "Right. Because nothing says family like handing over everything you have to the one who lies the loudest." She didn't correct me. That hurt more than if she'd raised her voice. The next day, I asked Trina to meet me for coffee. I needed to know, needed to hear it from her lips, how deep this narrative had gone. She looked nervous from the start. Stirred her drink too long, kept adjusting her scarf. I asked carefully, without accusation, "Why didn't you ask me before believing what Vera said?" She flinched, as if I'd raised my voice. But I hadn't. "You've just changed," she said. "You sound bitter. I didn't think you could be that cruel to your own sister." I nodded. That was all. No anger, no speech. Just a nod. Then I picked up my phone, scrolled to her name, and deleted it. Closure doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives like a quiet door shutting. That night, I went back through my documents. Grandma's notarized will sat in a sealed folder in the back of my closet. I opened it, read it again. Not because I doubted, but because I needed the reminder, the validation. Her signature was bold, clear. To my granddaughter Blythe, sole beneficiary of my home and belongings. I placed the will in a fireproof box I'd bought last year when wildfire season crept too close for comfort. Then I scanned it, again, and uploaded it to my Dropbox. Sent copies to myself, to my lawyer, even to a friend out of state. Insurance, of the emotional kind. If no one else believed me, at least I'd have the truth in writing. It was late when I got home. Vera's car wasn't in the driveway, which gave me a moment of false relief. I pushed open the front door and stepped into my living room, and stopped cold. 3 women I'd never seen were standing under my grandmother's chandelier, sipping wine from glasses I'd boxed up months ago. Vera stood between them, smiling, gesturing around like a realtor at an open house. "And over here," she said, "is where I plan to build the sunroom. This home's just been such a gift." She saw me before I could say anything, but she didn't flinch. She just said, "Oh, you're back early," and then turned back to her guests. I didn't answer her. Couldn't. I just stood there, my feet rooted to the hardwood floors my grandmother had waxed every Saturday morning for 30 years. Vera continued talking to her guests, floating from room to room like some self-appointed curator of a legacy she hadn't earned. "These floors are original," she cooed. "We're planning to preserve them during the remodel. Sentimental value, you know?" One of the women, blonde and overdressed, looked up. "Is this your family home?" Vera smiled, modest but theatrical. "It belonged to someone very close to me. I've been here ever since the diagnosis. It's been healing." I cleared my throat, not loud. Just enough. All eyes turned. Vera didn't miss a beat. "Oh, everyone, this is Blythe." Her voice changed, light, flippant. "She's my cousin. I let her stay here for a bit after everything. Cousin, let me stay." I opened my mouth, then shut it. I didn't trust what would come out. I wasn't embarrassed. I was stunned. The lie was so smooth, so easy, it chilled me more than if she'd shouted it. I left. I walked through the kitchen, out the back door, and into the garden, the one Grandma had planted by hand when I was 10. I paced the stone path between the roses and the herbs and dialed the clinic again. "Dr. Adler's office," a voice chirped on the other end. I gave my name, my tone level. "I've called before. I just need you to double-check. Is there any patient under the name Vera Carrington?" There was a pause, shorter than last time, but heavier. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said gently. "We don't have a patient by that name. Are you sure it's this clinic?" I didn't answer, just wrote it all down, the date, the time, her name. If Vera was lying about the cancer, how deep did the lies run? Later that evening, after the strangers had left, leaving behind lipstick-stained wineglasses and compliments about Vera's strength, I climbed into the attic. The heat up there was suffocating. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight as I pulled out the old photo albums. My hands shook, not from sadness, but from determination. I brought the albums downstairs, opened them on the kitchen table, and flipped through pages until I found what I was looking for. Grandma planting petunias, me holding a plastic shovel, our hands muddy and proud. I printed copies. I removed every framed affirmation Vera had placed around the house, quotes that sounded like they'd been plucked from a yoga retreat brochure, and replaced them with photos. Real ones. Me and Grandma baking, sitting on the porch swing, painting the front steps. I didn't say a word to Vera, didn't announce what I was doing, just did it. By midnight, the house looked different. Not back to how it was, but no longer hers. I don't need to scream to reclaim this home. One picture at a time, I'll take it back. The next morning, I was sipping coffee at the dining room table when Vera appeared in the doorway of my studio. She was dressed in a silk robe, holding a to-do list. She smiled like we were planning a baby shower. "You know I'm planning a farewell party, right?" Her tone was light, like she was offering to carpool to brunch. I set my coffee down without answering and waited. "The invitations already went out," she continued, flipping through a small stack of cards with faux gold leaf edges. "It's Saturday night. Just a little something for the people who've supported me through this journey." Journey, a word she liked to toss around like it came with a trail of medical records and hospital bracelets, not scented candles and perfectly staged photos. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The way she breezed past me, already humming some vague melody as she padded barefoot into the living room, told me everything. This was a done deal in her mind. By Thursday, the house looked like a Pinterest board. She had swapped out the curtains for white chiffon that hung too long and swept the floor like gowns. Battery-operated candles lined every surface. A folding table stood in the corner, draped in gauze and labeled, In her handwriting, a celebration of courage. I walked in mid-setup and paused at the sight of a framed sign reading, "Not everyone understands your journey, but those who do, stay." Vera turned with a smile, hands on her hips. "I figured you wouldn't want to deal with planning. I got it covered." She acted like she was saving me from something, but I wasn't the one hiding behind floral scarves and selective amnesia. Later that evening, I passed the bathroom on the way to the laundry room and heard her voice echoing off tile. "Some people just never made peace with my strength," she said, and paused, clearly timing the weight of the words. "But healing happens in the hardest places." She was rehearsing, practicing her goodbye speech like it was opening night and the chandelier was her spotlight. I stood on the stairs, just out of sight, and pulled out my phone. I hit record. I listened to her for another minute, her tone so soft, so wounded, that if I hadn't known the truth, I might have cried. But I did know, so I didn't. "If she's staging a performance," I whispered, "then I'm bringing the real script." The attic was hot, even with the fan running. I went up there Friday morning under the excuse of finding extra chairs. What I found was wedged between 2 boxes of Christmas lights and a dented humidifier, a sealed envelope with my name on it. To Bly, when you need it most. Grandma's handwriting was shaky, but still familiar. I sat cross-legged in the dust and opened it. Inside was a letter, not typed, not formal, just her voice on paper. "The house goes to Blythe Carrington, solely, because she stayed when others left." At the bottom was a notarized stamp and a date, 3 months before Grandma passed. I didn't cry. I felt it, but I didn't cry. What I felt more than anything was stillness, like something inside of me, long displaced, had finally snapped back into place. This wasn't just shelter. It wasn't even just memory. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't imagining things, that I had mattered. I scanned the letter, made 3 copies, emailed my lawyer. 1 copy I folded into my purse. The second I sealed in a folder near the door. The third I taped to the underside of a wine glass that I knew Vera had chosen for her toast. If she wanted theater, I'd give her truth. That night, I looked in the mirror and told myself, let's see how well she performs when the real script drops mid-act. Saturday came faster than I thought, and with it, a living room full of witnesses. The doorbell rang just before dusk. Then again, and again. Within the hour, the living room filled. Soft murmurs, rustling jackets, delicate hugs. A slow trickle of Vera's curated guest list. Yoga classmates, women from grief circles, a few co-workers who couldn't quite remember where they knew her from, and of course, the obligatory cousins we hadn't seen since Grandma's last 4th of July barbecue. Candles glowed in every corner. Champagne glasses, ones I'd kept boxed up for special occasions, stood perfectly aligned on the mantel, beneath a banner Vera had taped herself. Life's Last Light. Her handwriting, rounded and oddly childlike, curled beneath each silver letter. She entered from the hallway like an actress making her entrance. Cream robe, hair in a loose braid, barefoot. Her eyes scanned the room like she was absorbing the warmth of every head nod and half smile. I stayed seated on the far end of the room. No expression, just the phone in my hand, screen dark. Vera cleared her throat, lifting a glass. "I never expected to face this kind of chapter so soon," she began, her voice fragile but clear. "But I've made peace with what's coming. Not everyone could. That's okay. Forgiveness frees the forgiver." A murmur of agreement swept the room. Someone dabbed their eyes. Another whispered, "Bless her heart," under her breath. Vera continued, soft as linen. "Sometimes the people around us aren't ready to face loss, but I forgive them anyway." The phrase hung in the air like incense. I waited, then stood. She froze. Not outwardly, but her shoulders stiffened just enough. She turned, still smiling. "Before everyone leaves," I said, voice even, "I'd like you all to hear something. Just one thing. The only thing that matters. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. It began to play immediately. The speaker's voice was clinical, recorded, unimpressed. This is Dr. Adler's office returning a call regarding Vera Carrington. We have no record of a patient by that name. She has never been treated at our facility. Silence. No one moved. One woman slowly turned her head toward Vera. A man set his drink down without a sound. Vera stepped forward. That's a misunderstanding. It's private information. HIPAA protects. But you invited us here to grieve, someone said. A woman near the buffet table. Another voice joined. You lied? About cancer? Vera's eyes darted between faces, searching for a life raft. No one stepped forward. I walked to the wine table, lifted the glass I'd marked earlier, turned it over. The folded letter fell out. I opened it slowly, placing it where everyone could see. A copy of Grandma's handwriting, her signature, the notarized seal. The house belongs to Blythe Carrington, solely, because she stayed when others left. Gasps, murmurs, and more silence. Vera reached for it, fast, desperate, but I stepped in her path. She backed off. A flash went off. Someone had taken a photo. I've been here, I said. I cared for her. Not for applause, not for stories, and definitely not for followers. The crowd began to thin. Some quietly backed toward the door. Others muttered. One woman shook her head and whispered, "This is sick." Vera tried to save it. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted peace. I just wanted to feel loved. You wanted an audience, I said, and you got one. She looked at me, something sharp and hollow behind her eyes, but said nothing. Marcia stood near the stairs, arms crossed, unmoving. For once, she didn't look at me. She didn't look at Vera either, just at the letter. When Opal walked over, she didn't speak. She took my hand in both of hers and gave a single squeeze. Her presence said everything no one else dared. Later that night, as the candles burned out one by one and the silence returned to its rightful place, I sat in the studio. It wasn't over. But something had cracked, and by morning, the photos were online. Vera had vanished. Her silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like calculation. Vera's absence that morning said more than 100 denials could have. She didn't leave a note, not a text, just gone. But the internet hadn't gone anywhere. By breakfast, my phone was full of messages, screenshots of the party, the voicemail clip, photos of Vera lunging for the will like a cornered animal. The comments rolled in fast, a flood of, I knew something felt off. How could anyone fake that? And the one that hurt the most. She did this before. I stared at my screen while the kettle screamed behind me. I didn't move to silence it. The house was still. For the first time in months, it was quiet on its own terms. Around mid-morning, I heard the front door click open. She hadn't vanished. She was still here. I found her in the hallway, pacing, a half-zipped duffel bag in one hand and her phone in the other. Her eyes were wide, unfocused, the usual mask of serenity gone. Panic clung to her like sweat. You! She hissed, pointing the phone at me like it could defend her. You planned that whole thing. I crossed my arms. You planned it. I just let the curtain fall. She dropped the bag and stepped closer, voice rising. You always played the quiet one, the good girl, but you were just waiting to humiliate me. I didn't humiliate you, I said, steady. You did that all by yourself. Grandma loved me more, she shouted, eyes wild. She would have given me the house if you hadn't poisoned her against me. The words echoed off the walls. And then, just like in every story where the timing is too perfect to believe, Marcia walked in. She froze at the threshold, caught mid-step. Vera's eyes widened for a heartbeat, then narrowed like a child caught lying. No one spoke. Then Marcia exhaled and walked past Vera without looking at her. She sat down on the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap. For the first time since all this began, she looked old. Not in years, but in weight. I thought, she began, staring at nothing. That if I kept the peace, we'd still have a family. I stayed still. I didn't interrupt. You didn't keep the peace, I said quietly. You just handed her the match. Vera scoffed. You're both so dramatic. Marcia finally looked at her. Really looked. Her expression wasn't angry. It was empty. I don't know who you are anymore. The silence stretched. Then Marcia turned to me. She's still your sister, Blythe. I nodded. She is, and I'll always be her sister, but I won't be her silence. Vera looked like she wanted to scream again, but the wind had gone out of her. She snatched up her bag, stormed toward the door, and slammed it behind her so hard the wall rattled. I stood there, heartbeat even. Later that evening, Opal came by with a tin of lemon bars. She didn't ask what happened, just stepped in, noticed the half-empty wine glass Vera had left on the counter, and started packing up what remained. We filled 2 boxes, a cracked ceramic candle holder, a stack of affirmations printed on watercolor paper, and the last piece of Vera's curated identity, her healing vision board, now bent and shedding glitter. You know, Opal said as she taped the last box shut, this house finally feels like it can breathe again. I nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I believed it too. The day after, while pulling weeds in the garden, I found a picture frame face down in the dirt. The glass was cracked. I bent down and lifted it, expecting another photo of Vera wrapped in faux frailty. But it wasn't a photo. It was a printout, a medical chart. One look at the date told me everything. She'd done this before, to someone else. The paper was damp along one corner. I lifted it gently, brushing off bits of soil. It wasn't just any form. It was a mock medical chart, familiar layout, familiar terms. And at the bottom, barely visible beneath Vera's decorative highlighting, was a web address. I walked inside, dropped the gloves by the back door, and opened my laptop. It didn't take long. The image was right there on the first page of a stock photo site, labeled Example Breast Cancer Scan, and uploaded in March 2019. I didn't feel rage. Not immediately. It was something colder than that, like watching a magician repeat a trick once you already knew how it worked. An hour later, I was sitting on the porch steps, the sun low behind the pines, when a car pulled into the driveway. The man who stepped out was tall, neatly dressed, but looked like he hadn't slept much in days. He held something in his hands, a flash drive. I stood before he reached the porch. You don't know me, he said, but I know who you are. I didn't answer. I waited. I'm Colt, he said. Vera's ex. From a couple years back. I nodded slowly. Go on. She told me she had ovarian cysts, said they might turn cancerous. She moved in the next week, took over my place, my bank account, told my friends she was dying. His voice didn't shake, but his hands did. She vanished one day, said she needed to go find peace in a warmer climate, took $5,000 from my savings before she left. He held out the flash drive. She sent me these voice memos, updates, stuff she was going to post online. I recognized her voice from your video. The cadence, the language, it's all rehearsed. I took it, careful not to say thank you too fast. You're not the first, he said, but maybe you'll be the last. He left without asking for anything. No explanation, no closure, just a tired nod. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, played the clip. Vera's voice flowed through the speakers. Same softness, same pauses, same breathy emphasis on words like resilience and healing. She even recycled exact lines from the party. Then I made a video. I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I kept it simple. First, I played the voicemail from Dr. Adler. Then, the clip from Colt's flash drive. Then, I held up the fake chart and zoomed in on the URL. I ended with, this isn't a smear campaign. This is a pattern. And it's time people knew. I hit upload. It was live for 6 minutes before the first comment came in. By morning, it had passed 150,000 views. Comments ranged from stunned empathy to outrage. Then came the DMs. People telling me about their exes, friends, coworkers who'd faked illness for validation, gifts, or money. One message stood out. "We've been tracking this behavior," it read. "We're a nonprofit that investigates medical deception. Vera fits several profiles. Would you be willing to talk?" I replied yes before I could overthink it. Around noon, I walked through the house. No guests. No sound machines humming faux nature. Just quiet. I pulled out Grandma's old recipe book and flipped to the page with her lemon bar instructions. Her handwriting curved around a coffee stain in the margin. I baked. I didn't invite anyone. I didn't photograph the results. I sat at the table with a chipped plate and ate one lemon bar in silence. There was no applause, no validation, but the peace was real. The knock came just as I was rinsing the pan. Not frantic, not uncertain. I opened the door. Marcia stood there, holding one of Vera's scarves. She didn't ask to come in. She just looked at me like a mother realizing the apology was 10 years too late. She didn't ask to step inside. Just stood there, scarf in hand, like a mother who had run out of things to defend, and finally realized that silence didn't equal safety. Her eyes weren't puffy, but something about her face looked sunken, like whatever kept her upright had finally let go. "I found this on my couch," she said. Her voice was thin. She left it behind and told me not to come after her. She held up Vera's silk scarf, soft cream with burgundy trim, the same one she'd worn to the party like a badge of fragile grace. I opened the screen door and stepped outside, letting it click behind me. "Then why did you come?" She blinked. "Because I thought, maybe you should have it." I didn't take the scarf. We sat on the porch in the cold kind of quiet only mothers and daughters can hold. I poured 2 cups of tea and passed hers without eye contact. She held it like it burned. "I thought I was protecting her," she said eventually. "I thought she was the one who needed it." I said nothing. "I told myself you were stronger," she went on, "that you didn't need me to defend you. And maybe that was true, but—" Her voice caught. "But strength doesn't mean you should have to stand alone." I met her gaze finally. "You didn't protect her. You enabled her. And you didn't leave me alone, Mom. You stood there while she dismantled everything Grandma left and let her put her name on it." Marcia looked down into her cup like it could offer a rewrite. "She's your sister." "I know that," I said, "and I will always be her sister. But I'm not her audience, not her stagehand, and definitely not her scapegoat." She let out a slow breath. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I needed to say this to your face. You don't owe me anything, but I'm sorry." We sat for a while longer. The breeze nudged the wind chimes Grandma had hung years ago. I remembered her saying, "Even silence needs punctuation." I picked up the scarf and held it out to Marcia. "Give this to her if she asks, but if she wants to come back, she comes through the front door. No more slipping in sideways." Marcia took it, folded it slowly like she was putting away a chapter. After she left, I locked the door. I walked through the house once more, slow, deliberate, checking every window, touching every photo I'd restored. I reached the fireplace, where the letter still stood beneath Grandma's portrait, and lit a match. Then I pulled a page from my journal and wrote one last letter, not to Vera, not to Marcia, but to myself. I didn't write her name. I didn't write mine. I just wrote, "You're allowed to love people who don't know how to love back, but you don't have to let them live in your house." I folded it, set it in the hearth, and let the flame take it. It curled, blackened, and disappeared like it had always meant to. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just stood there, feeling something lift. Not fully, not forever, but enough. Enough to go upstairs, wash my face, and sleep in a house that was finally only mine. Weeks passed. The headlines faded. So did the comments. But one morning, I stood in the kitchen at dawn, holding a cup of coffee, staring out at the garden. And for the first time since I'd stepped foot back in that house, it didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home. There was no dramatic sunrise that morning, no symbolic breeze lifting curtains or birdsong cued just right. Just the hum of the coffee machine, the distant creak of old floorboards adjusting with the shift in temperature, and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. I walked barefoot across the kitchen, same as I had for months, but something had changed. There was no fear of bumping into misplaced furniture, no lavender mist in the hallway, no faux spiritual soundtrack humming from a hidden speaker. Just a house. My house. Still. Present. Finally settled. I pulled Grandma's recipe binder from the shelf above the pantry. The cover was frayed at the edges, her name in faded ink still visible. Marjorie Carrington's Best. I flipped to the lemon bar page, the one with a fingerprint of flour still pressed into the corner. It had been weeks since I'd touched the book, but today felt like a good day to bake. The batter came together fast. The oven warmed the air in that comforting, familiar way that made the house smell like summer afternoons and better times. I slid the pan inside and leaned against the counter, letting the warmth wrap around me. For once, I thought, the silence isn't full of what-ifs, it's just full. Later, I wandered into the studio. Dust floated in the early light, cutting through the curtains Grandma had hung decades ago. The same ones Vera once suggested replacing with something brighter. I'd ignored her then. Now, I was grateful for that defiance. I stood in front of the corkboard and pinned a new photo, one I'd taken just last week. Me, alone in the garden, laughing at something no one else would have understood. Underneath it, I scribbled a line in pencil. This version of me is not broken. She's rebuilding. Mail arrived just after noon. I shuffled through the usual stack of catalogs and bills before finding a plain white envelope addressed by hand. It was from the nonprofit that had reached out after my video went viral. The letter was brief. They thanked me for coming forward, explained that an investigation was underway regarding multiple aliases connected to Vera, and offered resources for emotional support, though they stressed I was under no obligation to participate further. At the bottom, someone had written a note in blue ink. Your story gave others permission to stop being silent. That matters more than you know. I didn't cry. But I did smile, not revenge, not punishment, just light in dark places. That weekend, I hosted a brunch in the garden. Nothing fancy. Just Opal, Lorraine, and my new intern Maya, who'd been helping me at the studio for the past few months. 3 people. A table under the cherry tree, lemon bars, coffee, laughter that didn't feel forced. No one made a speech. No one raised a glass to toast resilience. We just existed, together, without drama. At one point, Lorraine reached for a second lemon bar and looked around the yard with that same knowing look she always had. She'd be proud, you know. I didn't hesitate. She already was. I just had to catch up. After everyone left, I walked to the garden gate where the rosebush grew, one that had withered quietly the week Vera had taken over the house. It had begun blooming again, 3 soft pink buds pushing through with quiet insistence. I knelt down, watered the soil gently, and rested my hand on the trunk. This wasn't about keeping the house, I whispered. It was about keeping the story intact. And in the end, I didn't win because I shouted the loudest. I won because I stayed.